begin, take a moment to recognize Caperion for sponsoring this discussion. Thank you for investing in education and industry collaboration. Please join me welcoming our next panelist.
Hello, I'm Jeff Schura with Flowers Foods, and this will be my fourth BEMA convention. One thing I love about our industry is that we truly partner together as suppliers, OEMs, and bakers to improve our industry.
Hello, BEMA family. Welcome to beautiful Hawaii. I'm Chad Larson from Mellow Cream Donuts. Thanks for joining us in this important conversation.
My name is Nick Magistrelli. I work with Rademacher USA. This will be my 13th BEMA convention. And what I love most about the baking industry are all the relationships I've built over the years. They've had a profound effect on me personally and professionally, as well as my wife and my 3 children. Very grateful for that. It's truly a unique industry that I believe that we all are here to help each other succeed and grow. And I truly value that.
Hi, my name's Matt Zielsdorf. I've been coming to BEMA, well, as a member since 1998, and as a BEMA kid, I started in 1984. One of the things I love most about this industry is the family atmosphere. I love collaborating with customers and having projects get started from the ground up.
Oh my God. Whoa.
Forgot the sunscreen.
Or my sunglasses.
Jeez. Now I know what deer feel like.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here today, and as we stood up yesterday in the room and recognized who's here today, who's here this week, and the number of suppliers of ingredients and materials, the equipment manufacturers and the bakers, I thought this is the best opportunity to put one specification or standard on each table and have us start to review those. But I realized we didn't have enough tables to even start that process. So what we're here to do, and again, in spirit of the keynote speaker yesterday, is that we'll be better together as an industry. We're going to kick off a conversation about our standards and specifications and have a dialogue about, is there an opportunity to improve that or become more efficient? Okay. So with that, we have Baker and a couple of equipment manufacturers here with Chad and Matt and Nick. And one of the questions that I have is, what are the challenges you face today with our various standards and specifications in your operations?
Yeah, great topic. Well, first of all, Mellow Cream Donuts is an older company, but we're small. I think we're mighty but small. So when you look at like the groups that were up here before, Grupo Bimbo or Rise or some of these larger organizations, Pepperidge Farms, we just don't have the depth of resources like they do. So when we look at standards and we buy equipment, we have to really lean on the OEMs, and some of it, even I was just talking earlier with someone about our staff. My maintenance person, who I look at as my expert in that area, he doesn't even have a food or bakery experience. So we have to have something to be able to ask better questions with, and maybe a standard that can give us, or even better yet, let's not call it a standard, let's even say guideline, a standard guideline that we have that we can lean on to give us some better questions when we work with our OEMs buying equipment. I've worked for larger organizations and they have their own standards, and I think there's a lot of strength to that, but even within those, we realize over time there's opportunities to improve that, and we lean on other things around that. So I think there's a need. I believe there's a need out there, and I don't think we have a firm perspective on what that looks like yet as an organization or as an industry, because we've never really answered it fully. And I think there's a lot of different opinions out there. So great topic.
Yeah, and it's a great point that we're an industry of large companies, medium, small size companies, and how do we make something that's relevant for everybody, but not prohibitive, perhaps, to some? And so Matt, with you on the equipment side, what are some of your challenges with all the standards and specifications we have to choose from?
Well, maybe for us, the biggest challenge is that we have pretty much anything from mixing to freezing packaging. So there's everything in between. I remember the days where when I was selling mixers, and we had mixers that were mixing dough that got baked, so there was a quote kill zone. And then you had mixers that mixed cream to put on that cookie, let's say, and that did not have one. So the sanitation standards were completely different for those different, whether it could be the same mixer, let's say, but it had to have different standards. So I guess the other big one, and I'm sure Nick will agree with this, it's cost, because we want things to be safe. We want things, of course, we want them to be cleanable, but it comes at a cost. And when you approach the customer with sometimes, it's like, well, that's really expensive. And what our fear is that they sometimes gravitate towards the lower cost supplier because maybe they don't have the same standards. So what we want to see is a standard that everybody adheres to, so it takes that off the table.
Sure. Nick, how about you?
Well, thank you, Matt. At the end of the day, when it comes to Middleby, they've got so many different product lines underneath their umbrella. For Rademacher, it's a European company. So the challenge that we're presented with is when you have your core company being built, our Equipment Solutions in the Netherlands, and then you've got to, determine what's that baseline for the world. You have to look towards, the market and look at all these, and I'm not going to name all the acronyms off that we know, but, it's like, where do we draw the line and how do we, try to build the best equipment solutions in the world, but at the same time, be competitive price-wise. Yeah. So, for the record, we're all part of the baking industry forum. And one of the unique things about our forum is that it's, 6 bakers and 6 OEMs. So when we close the doors and have our little powwow sessions, we take off our Rademacher or Middleby or anybody's tags and we start talking about what is needed for the industry. The reality is, I don't think we need a new acronym. We don't need a new standard. We've just got to pick one and kind of set the bar. And quite honestly, I think it almost has to come from the bakery side and then sort of direct your traffic towards us.
I would agree. And we have many global companies today. You're selling to places far outside of the U.S. market. Each of them may have a different set of standards and specifications that you have to consider as you're making the equipment. And I hear that from our suppliers as well. So maybe I'll go to another point of that is, what are the part of that adds the most complexity for your operation?
Well, my world's pretty simple compared to these guys. They have to deal with a lot of us. So let's level set that. I think that, as we look at the standards, in one of the team members on the BIF Council talked about it, and they said, look, it comes down to cleaning practices as well. So the processes themselves need to be designed in a way that are sanitary and easily, and I think Carl mentioned it was efficient and effective, right? So meaning we get it done quickly and it's done properly. So we have a standard that we understand. So when we think about this opportunity to refine what we define as a standard guideline, how do we keep that perspective in mind? I thought that was a really, really smart thing to think about so we can minimize the complexity. I think we blow this thing into something way bigger than it probably needs to be because we all are doing basically the same thing. We're making something people are going to consume. Sensitivity around the consumer may be slightly different based on age group or other classifications, but at the end of the day, it's got to be food safe. The other thing I don't want to lose perspective is, in a lot of these pieces, when you get into that, really lean into the human safety aspect as well. And I don't think that we want to miss that attribute as well, because that is those two components in my, they ask about what you lose sleep over. I think those are the two number one things that I would say that if I had a risk, those are the two things I'd watch out for the most. So, although there's a lot of complexity to the conversation, really probably falls more on them because of all of our asks. But at the end of the day, keep perspective on efficient and effective, and also safety and quality. So, I agree. Boil it down to the simple stuff.
Yeah, and we've heard too, in many of our locations, it's a high degree of turnover, and we don't have the associates that have been there for generations that we've had recently, and that adds to some of that. So maybe simpler designs, more consistency with that. At the end, we do want to have it clean, and we want our associates to be safe in our facilities.
So lean principles, like SMED, thinking how we do things very quick and with the least amount of input from those folks, because it's got to be easy for them to comprehend it.
Sure. From the equipment side, what is the most complexity that's entering into this?
Well, I think, when you saw my sweet walk-up video, I mentioned how long I've been doing this. And I remember hearing one time from a customer, and they said that no engineer in this industry should be able to design a piece of equipment until they've been in the bakery and tried to clean that piece of equipment. And that stuck with me a long time ago. But, the fact is that when we're in bakeries pretty much every week, right? We're out there and you're seeing more, it's all about this equipment being safe and it's all about it being cleanable. So, of course, we want that as well. We want our designs to be clean. We want them to be safe. So it really just boils down to, I think, a lot of the guys I'm here with from my company, some of them were part of, riding this last, Z50 thing. So I think everybody is involved. You said it, Nick. I mean, we probably need to hear it from you. And we do when, customers order a new piece of equipment, if there's something that in their standard. And I think in our group, as we talked in our meetings, that we were saying that, you work with different, companies, and you do see different standards from different companies because they say we have to have this, and that's okay, I suppose, but, as long as we're all going with the same baseline.
That's right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, Nick, go ahead.
I would say that within all the learnings that I've had over my career, it's always, what's the goal? And the goal for all of us in this room is clean, safe food, right? So when you start there and you work yourself backwards, the complexity for the OEM side, regardless of who it is sitting in this room, is that when our end user is the bakeries, right? So we're taking the guidance from you essentially, whether that's the largest corporate company in the world, or it's a private held group, or it's private equity. Each one of you has a sort of a traditional setup for how you go to market. So, the game is, the end goal is to take care of the consumer, but our goal is to take care of you, and then you work your way back to us. So, we're a series of layers away and a variety of customers and a broad stroke reach of who we're trying to do business with to be able to come up with some standard that applies, right? And again, going back to that competitive solution, and if you work your way back to the first, the spotlight earlier, listening to Esteban talk, and you're talking about private equity and speed to market, well, that segues right into this discussion. Like if you put a bigger spec at the OEM, regardless of anybody in this room, and it's a big one, we might spend an extra month chewing on it. We might have to, send our resources to figure out, what it is to apply to that spec. The costs go up and lead times extend. So, when we're all in it together, if there was a standard, I think you'd kind of filter some of that out. I think it'd make for a much better situation for all of us.
Sure. So some minimum that we could all use and, comply with the various audits that we have. We have a BRC audit. We may have specific customer audits that look at things differently. OSHA may come in and look at something differently, and who knows what they're looking at in terms of a standard and specifications, or all of them. Yeah. So there could be a good minimum that we should maybe consider as a group. And then the next question I have for the team is, we sound like there's some challenges there. We have some complexity with what's available to us today as an industry. Maybe where is there an opportunity, do we think, to have some more efficiency in that? And Chad, maybe on your side, what could become more efficient for you or for us in the industry as we think about this?
Well, I'm gonna start off with a little bit broader stroke topic. I think we all understand what it looks like to try to keep a safe work environment for our team members and how complex that can be through the CFRs. And I think if anybody knows me, they know my trust of government and my position on that. I don't want them involved. So I think we as an organization or as an industry have to come together and say, what can we do to try to keep them at bay so they don't think they're smarter than us? Because Lord knows, I don't think Eric's in the room, but Lord knows the people in DC are not smarter than us. I promise you, with every ounce of my being, they are not. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't let that door open where they come in and try to make us bow to what they think we need, because they don't know. They're actually ignorant to it. So as these guys said, we're in our bakeries every day. We know what we need. So I think as we look at the opportunity to simplify and align, that becomes critical for us to stay ahead of that curve so they don't think they need to step in and take care of us. We're one major food safety incident away, whether it's bioterrorism or something crazy off the wall, or just a simple misstep by an organization that causes some mass problem. They'll think they need to step in and solve problems for us, and that we don't want. So we need to come down with some standard requirements that hold ourselves accountable as an industry to ensure that we don't get in that position. So, and I think that when we look at each other around the room, we all do the same thing. We think we're unique flowers. We really aren't. We're all pretty much doing the same stuff. Maybe just different scale, maybe just different a little bit, product lines, and maybe somebody has some uniqueness to it. But at the end of the day, we're doing the same thing. So I think we have the opportunity to have a common voice, even though we aren't on the same side of the table necessarily when we're selling. But we need to get together and figure this out. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So a little call to action on that. But that's really my thought on that.
Great, thank you. Matt, how about for you? Where's some opportunity to simplify?
It's funny that when we sat yesterday, I'm going to give a tireless plug to our AI session yesterday. I thought about the fact that we have these standards out there, whether it's ANSI, Z50, it's these other things. Has anybody ever taken these things and plugged them into AI and asked it to simplify it? I guess you have, right? And I haven't done that, but I'd be really interested in seeing what does it sell us? I mean, because if you cross it over, it's not just, you guys say it, you have OSHA requirements, and when we sell in California, there's Cal OSHA. When you sell into Canada, they have their own safety spec. And when you sell, so there's all these different things. And if we plug all that in, what does it tell us if you say, can you give us, the simplified version of this? I'm curious. I'd love to see that published.
Sure. Nick, and for
No,
you?
that's good. And to build off a little something, that started in our closed room session the other day with Chad, it's like, let's keep the government out, right? It's like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of incredible people in this room and in our industry, and, we have the power and the control to streamline this whole situation and control the controllables, right, in our life. So, one of the things for me, being more of a commercial guy working alongside brilliant engineers and scientists is, I think as an industry, sometimes, with all due respect, we tend to complicate things, right? And when you create a lot of these different possibilities and a lot of these different layers, that really becomes polluted in a certain way. And then there's where's the target? So, for me, the goal would be to, and Jeff spearheaded something like this, which is phenomenal from a great position in the industry. It's like grab something, use something as a starting point, and just start cleansing it out a little bit. Just start sifting it through, start seeing some of those basic principles that we're all striving for, and I think that will give us a little bit cleaner approach than to try to every single time figure out what the heck it is that you guys are looking for before we build equipment.
Yep, that's fair, especially now as it's a global supply chain of equipment and shipping components in and assembling equipment and then trying to manage running it and maintaining it in our facilities. I do know that years ago that started as an industry is just what you said, Chad. We wanted to make sure that we together worked through those and made sure what was important to us as bakers, suppliers, equipment manufacturers before someone came in and told us, because they don't know baking, right? They might know regulations and other things but that's how it started many years ago is what I've learned. And it's been updated throughout time and things are changing and there's some new things out there. And that's where I think there's some opportunity to revisit what that core fundamentals of the baking industry were, at least in the US, was how do we get ahead of this? How do we make sure we're doing it and someone's not doing it to us? And that partnership and collaboration that we have and that better togetherness that we talked about earlier, that's what we're looking for. And wanting to see some feedback, if you're seeing the same or feeling the same thing in your pieces of this, and want to join us and say, where should we go as an industry? We'd love to hear from you. Okay. So then the question is, as an industry, and I obviously shared my thoughts here, but where should we go and what are some options for us? We talked about BIF. This is a great opportunity and a great team to bring those folks together. Maybe we need some suppliers in there. We just need to think about how could we do this and what are some thoughts that you may have?
Well, I think, it was really empowering listening to the group sitting in there, the BIF group, behind closed doors. We've had several dialogues on it. I was on a call and then one in person here. And I think we're getting closer and closer to having common thought process on this. I think at first it was very, very spread out. And the funny thing is I was a little bit surprised at how resistant some of the bakery folks were around it. And it's not because they're resistant to it, it's just because there really is a need for it. And I think as we got further down the path, I think everybody realized there is something there, but what is it? How do we engage in that? And we want to make sure that whatever we do, we get everyone's voices there. And I think the call to action is going to be that if you have any interest in this, you should start the conversation internally and then bring it to whomever you can as far as the BIF Council or through Jeff and what he's going to present here in a little bit as far as how to engage with it. We've got to step up and say what we think, because if we don't, and we just let it ride, we're going to ride whatever wave comes at us, and that's probably not a good plan. So I think if you have an opinion, which I'm sure everyone in this room does, you should step up and make sure you get your voice heard.
Matt?
Well, somebody used a lot of acronyms out there. We don't need another one, but there's, we do have BEMA, we have BIF, we have ASB, we have ABA, we have all these things, and I feel like in the years I've been in this industry, the collaboration between those associations has gotten so much stronger. So to continue this, not just at BEMA, not just at BIF, but throughout those organizations, and I think this came originally through ASB, right? So let's continue doing that because it gives us more opportunity through the year to meet and have a lot more people involved than just the BIF.
Nick?
Thanks, Jeff. I think the good news is there's a lot of talent in this room. There's a lot of great leaders in this room. I've done this for a long time, and that's really the blessing of being in the baking industry is being surrounded by the type of people that are in this room. But the challenge with that is, we all are busy people. You're busy with your day-to-day activities. You're busy with some personal things, your families. And as I get a little bit older, I recognize that it's so cliche, but time is still our most precious asset. So when we look at something like this and we all want the same thing, it's really about focus. So the question is, if we're going to select a small group such as BIF, and we've targeted it and we've aimed at it, can we build off the momentum? And that's the reason why we took it to convention, is we wanted to bring it up to the surface, get the feedback from the broad group, and then at the end of the day, hope that some of you in this room are influenced and inspired enough to say, hey, I want to be part of that as well, and gravitate towards the guys on the stage today and the gals in the room that are also affiliated with this group and say, hey, listen, I could be helpful there. So, I think it's about focus and it's about momentum, and that's what I think we should be thinking as an industry. Can we do this together?
Great. I would agree. And I would add, as I think through some of the ones we have today, the people safety standard, the food safety, hygienic design that we have, I view that as not intellectual property. That's the base for our industry. And if we think about it maybe in the context of what is that minimum that can apply to all scales? And maybe that will clear that roadblock of, well, we don't want this, or it's too much, or it's too complicated, but kind of go back to what's a good baseline to start?
Yeah.
And how do we think about that differently?
I think of another thing is I always talk about Deming, and when I look at lean and the cost of quality, there's no cost of quality. I think we have to put back to some of the things that were mentioned earlier from the OEMs was regarding the cost of this process. And I think we need to be a little thoughtful around that and cautious to think that's going to be a hurdle we have to overcome, because if we're all living to the same standard or holding each other to the same standard, that becomes a baseline and it becomes kind of the ante to stay in the game. Now, when you ask for something above that, which some larger organizations or even smaller organizations may ask for, well, that's a different perspective, a different conversation. But I think the cost of quality, we need to be clear, is it's important.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Agrees for the whole industry.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay. So just a reminder, and again, we're not here to talk about any one specific thing or saying that there's a solution for us. We want to start this conversation again or continue it because I've heard it. We've all heard it. We talk about it frequently. ASB just finished publishing the Z50.1, the revised version, which many of you participated in that process. The G50.2, the hygienic design standard, is now starting the renewal process. And the expectation is probably over the next 3 to 5 years to do that and gather that information. If you are interested, please feel free to scan this. And there's just starting a committee of experts in the room and in the industry to help with that. So there's a little bit there from the ASB side. Okay. And then it's for a nomination for that committee. I think the other one is through this meeting, the Z50.1 is available for everyone that's attending today. So if you haven't seen it, take a look at it. It's what's adding complexity and what's helping us in the industry. That's just one example, but that's available for everybody attending today as well.
Yeah, it's in the app.
Yeah,
It's in the app. So if you look in the app, you'll find that.
Okay,
Do we have any questions out there? Do we want to take
Yeah,
questions?
any
We have a little
questions
extra
from the
time.
audience?
sure.
Okay.
Let us know who you are because we really can't see
Yeah.
you.
Jason from Pure Autos, Jason Tucker from Pure Autos. But
And Jason?
my question is actually, I was sitting here posing like, should I ask, but where can you see the ingredient suppliers helping to partner? Because obviously what we bring to the bakers, but also what ends up on the line has an impact on the sanitary, whether it's like we mentioned, so we were talking about colors earlier, like that have what transfers to belts. Where do you see us being able to partner with you guys to help drive this forward?
I can give some thoughts there. As you think of sanitary design, what are the things that we worry about? The physical risks that's out there, the biological risk, and the chemical risk. And how do we clean those? Or how do we make sure that that's not part of the product? And so as you think about the new formulas and allergens or colors, how do we clean those? And how do we have equipment designed so that we can do it, properly and in a time frame that makes sense for our team members? So there is an involvement for sure on the suppliers, especially today with what's happening in all food. What else do we need to look at? And what are those opportunities? And how do we think about making sure that doesn't become an issue or an allergen carryover?
Well, I think I'll take it a step further. You're making food. So if you really get right into the nuts and bolts of it, you're making something goes into food. So essentially you're making food. So anything you buy for your equipment to process the materials that are going to go into the bakery have to be held to a similar or same standard. Because at the end of the day, if they're not, then that causes a potential risk for one of the 3 contaminants that Jeff mentioned. So I don't think you're exclusive to this because you're just selling into the bakery. I think you're just right in the mix with us bakers, frankly. So you're part of the process stream.
Well, and I'll add to that, at the end of for me, I think of one word here, it's like awareness, right? So as the market becomes more aware of what goes on in the bakeries and goes on in these processes, I just look to my children that are just, when they could grab their phone and there's so much information that it's accessible, they want to track what they're eating and where it's coming from and how it's processed. So, all the ingredient companies out there, you're the what's coming in. It's processed on my equipment, but it's in these gentlemen's bakeries, and I think it's very important that you guys, sort of play on the same level as all of us and make sure we do this right.
Good question, though.
Hey guys, I have a question for you. As you guys alluded to, as we all know, or most of us I think know, the bakery industry does have the 2 ANSI standards, Z50.1, Z50.2, safety and sanitation respectively. What I'd like to know is, are any of you guys referring to that and using that in either the production of your equipment or production of your products? And for Matt and Nick, is anybody today actually including those standards as part of their POs?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that. I know that as an ASB board member, we get to see the BEAG, which uses the ANSI 50.1 standard. There is more participation and actually even a little bit of uptick in traction around that recently. So I can't speak to the volume and how many people there are in general, but I think that there is some interest in it, and we're seeing it. And we just see that through the transactional aspect of the organization. So I can speak to that, but the rest of it I don't know for sure. You guys might be better.
I mean, and clearly you get a PO and then attached to that a lot of times, especially with the bigger companies, you do get a design spec. And I know that's Dave. I can't see you, Dave, but I know your voice anywhere. So Dave's out there. But, I know that you do, and I can't speak to whether or not it's actually, cut and paste from the Z50.1, but a lot of it does talk about the, and those of us that get POs in this room, we see a lot of that, I'm sure.
Well, I don't, and it's a good question, Dave. I don't think we necessarily see, ANSI Z50.2 that shows up in a PO. But when we look through that spec, a lot of times, hopefully we get it before the PO is issued. So, because then the changes are going to come a little bit. But at the end of the day, when we see what the spec looks like, we could interpret it where that origin was, right? So if you sort of follow the breadcrumbs, you could say, all right, that person must have, or that group must have, leaned in one of these directions. So then it allows us to kind of interpret things, looking at it through that lens. But, I don't think that we're seeing the acronyms pop up on the purchase orders, not too often anyways. On our side, we'll try to establish in just some of our boilerplate text in the quote, this is sort of who, whether it's E-Hedge or whatever it is, this is the standard that we follow, and these are the Orgaline conditions that we operate within. And then in a certain way, sort of rely on the bakers a little bit to also, investigate that and research that a little bit and say, all right, here's where they stand before we, start digging in and, finding our way through this. But hopefully we see it before the purchase order.
And I think, it was just as you were saying that, Nick, you might see that spec, but if equipment's, manufacturers are using that spec, you might be told that you need 6 inches of clearance. But then you get a PO from somebody who says, no, I need 18 inches of clearance.
That's right.
So that's what I was getting at when it comes to, these things cost money. If you're gonna, okay, well, we designed it to 6 and now you need 12 inches taller so you can do whatever you need to do. That's fine, but just understanding but I would say Nick, you agree that you get more of that. You get more of, well, I know that's what is considered standard, but we need something better.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned as well. So we are attaching some of those standards in some POs, but then we also hear the manufacturers are working with several others as well, and that there's some opportunity there, I think, for simplification of some of those things. It can be very confusing, and could add time, could add cost, and so that's why we were having this discussion. I believe there's opportunity to take a look at that. How far we get, given all the different things that we do and where we have facilities around the world, that's something that we need to consider.
Yeah. This is Terry Barch with AMF. I'm right in the middle, Jeff. So I don't know if it's more of a question, but maybe some comments. Jeff, you mentioned audits, your equipment audits. I don't think in my whole career that we as an equipment manufacturers understand your audits. And Nick said we need feedback from the bakers. Some of the feedback is, where are your, how are we doing on your audits? I mean, I know it's a number of different people, equipment, but there's some feedback that from an equipment side would be very helpful. Even understanding, I don't understand, I've never been part of an audit. I don't know, as an equipment manufacturer, if we understand all the audits. So, I think that could be an opportunity. You're asking for opportunities, and I think that's one. Another comment is, again, you were going down the line of talking about, how we all, we talked about these standards and all that sort of stuff. There's a little bit of a movement in the industry right now from a collaboration standpoint where we as organizations are starting to work together and be part of this collaborative effort. And there's kind of an avenue there to try to come up with a standard, like I said, a minimum standard for sanitation, a minimum standard for safety and all that, because we all got the same goals. And like you said, Matt, that's an option. It's built to us. It's built to one standard. We all have to have a standard, And then if a company wants a different standard, yes, it comes at a price, absolutely. So again, I guess my question for Jeff and Chad is, how could we get feedback from your audits and that you guys go through? Is that and how often is an audit? Is it a yearly audit? Is it I don't know. I don't know. So anyway.
It depends on your business. It could be weekly and some, right? Depending on who's your customer.
Yeah, customers, yeah.
And your own internal third-party audit. So that's great feedback. And a lot of times with audits, it's the audit you saying, what are you supposed to do and how are you going to do it? And are you doing that? And you can come and be part of the audit. Those are always little tense moments for some of us as we have. But essentially I think there's opportunity for that standardization. Because again, it's what we said we're going to do and are we doing it that way? And when it comes down to a sanitary design and cleaning a machine and making sure any of those potential contaminants are away from the product, then we can probably more or less come to a common thing of this is what we say as an industry we're doing for this type of equipment. And then we do it. And that's the audit piece of it. Are we actually doing what we say? And so those are some of the things, but it's different customers, different agencies, different regulatory agencies, our own third-party teams working for us. So there's, again, some simplification there or some efficiency, I think, that can be gained. But again, they're separate parties for us.
I think auditing it's an interesting game. I've loved it. I've done it my whole career, going 30 plus years. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. GFSI now is the new standard benchmark that most of us live by, whether it's SQF or BRC or IFS, one of those, standards. But I look at it as a story. When the auditor comes in, they're not they don't generally walk in with this preset thought process of this is how they have to do this. They usually walk in and ask you how you do it, and then follow up, do you do what you say you're going to do? So, and I always look at it as a story, and not like a fishing story, because if you've ever been around me, you'll know I can tell a good tale. But it's really a walk through a process of steps, and it's a story that you're telling of how you're making a safe product. And if the story starts with something foundational, like a standard that we buy our equipment to, that gives us a better perspective on how to do it effectively, and then we live to that through the practices that we do at the application side when we're actually cleaning the equipment, breaking it down, and doing what we need to do to make sure we ensure safe products. I think that tells part of the story for us. So the feedback to the OEMs on that is just be part of that story and give us a standard that we can live with. Because like I said, we're not all big companies, so we don't all have that depth of experience or depth of resources that we can provide to you that we're going to have. Here's our standard. Some companies just go by what we have out there in the industry. So that's a great question, and I think there's a further dialogue around that, but engage in this part of the process and you'll be able to have a voice to that as well and be part of our story.
Agree.
Well, thank you to all the panelists that contributed to the conversation. Thank you specifically to Jeff and Chad for bringing this important topic forward and starting the conversation, raising awareness. I think it was a very active conversation and what we wanted to happen today. So thank you very much. Let's give all of our speakers a round of applause. We'd also like to thank Coperion one more time for sponsoring this session. And at this time, we will take a morning refresher break out in the courtyard. Thank you, Gia. We will meet up right back in here at 11 a.m. for an IBIE Spotlight you will not want to miss.